The Red-Green Alliance is a phenomenon that first happened a number of years ago in Europe and also in the UK, where leftist politicians found that they could potentially gain power by trying to court the Muslim vote, as the Muslim population has grown a lot in a number of European countries like France or the Netherlands or the UK, and so on and so forth. A lot of these politicians nowadays are with parties such as the Green Party, or they might be independent. And this is it's a dangerous development, because the particular Muslim vote that they're courting is not like integrated, moderate type of Muslims. They're going after they're partnering with so-called community leaders who are Islamists, who are radical, who are into political Islam, and they're trying to use those type of influencers to get votes within these communities that are self-segregating. And of course, those communities may vote them in, and they have particular demands, right? You're going to they have demands about whether it be, most recently, over they want their views of the hatred of Israel being represented in parliament, for example. They want a lot of institutional funding and support for anti-Islamophobia type causes. And a lot of the anti-Islamophobia campaigns is blasphemy. In other words, essentially, in that anti-blasphemy, and that they don't want people to be able to criticize aspects of their religion, or to try to put a stop, for example, to mass migration.
Do you remember, I think you were part of this article, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember about 6 or 7 years ago, Der Spiegel did a cover piece about the rise of the alt-right, journalists in America. And the guy I didn't know that that's what the article was going to be about. He came to my house for like 48 hours, watched a whole bunch of shows and some public events that I did, and then wrote the most god-awful, dishonest piece ever. And it was my picture on the cover of Der Spiegel, which is, the #1 magazine in Germany. And the picture that he used, I'm sitting on my couch. We had a huge American flag behind me, and I'm smiling, and I've got my arms kind of out like this. And when I emailed the guy and I said, man, what a dirtbag you are, what a hit piece this is. This was so dishonest. All the quotes are out of context, blah, blah. He said, Dave, if it was a real hit piece, we would have used a picture where you didn't look good. And I thought, man, you got like the level of BS with you people is just extraordinary. But I guess I'm pretty sure you were in that one. You may not even remember it.
I didn't read that piece, but Der Spiegel is a very big liberal magazine in Germany, and I'm sorry that you were a target of a piece by them. I mean, I know what it's like to be targeted by liberal media, left-wing media, activist media. That's happened to me actually a lot. In some ways, it's actually been a bit traumatizing. And I know when I say that, it sounds like it might sound like hyperbole, but it's not. It's kind of I don't Google myself anymore, but I remember when I did, or when I looked at what people were writing in my Wikipedia and what would show up when somebody would search my name, I was really distraught by it, because it's not who I am. And I wrote about this a bit in my book, about the idea laundering and how Wikipedia and Google can be manipulated in a way through like activist writers. They'll write some piece that's essentially an opinion piece. It's a blog piece. I mean, anybody can have an opinion, but then because it's published on some left-wing website like Daily Beast or Vox or Slate or something, then now there's a citation you can put in your Wikipedia. So, for example, there was a commentary, right? A person reviewed my book for the LA Times. I think LA Times was the only legacy media that published a review of my book. It was a very nasty review. I could tell that the person didn't actually read my book. He probably skimmed through a couple of chapters. Yeah. And he put in there that there are allegations that Andy Ngo is associated with the violent far right. That might not be verbatim, but it's close to that. It says something like that. And then now that's like cited in my Wikipedia that the LA Times said Andy Ngo has associations. And you see how it's like not true. It's like somebody's a review is an opinion piece, first of all. A review of a book is an opinion. Two, to say that somebody else makes that claim without substantiating any of it, providing, independently reviewing those claims, for example, but just saying that the accusation is out there. And then now using that as a citation in these other follow-up pieces that other people write or in your Wikipedia, it's how you can have your reputation be completely smeared. And so that has been difficult for me through all these years because I'm actually, I'm very mild manner. I take professionalism in my work very, very seriously. And accuracy is paramount to me. And, the few times that I've gotten things wrong over the years, it's extremely disappointing. And I have to come out and own it and make corrections and all that. But it's,
well, Andy, I would largely say you're hated by the right people and liked by the right people. So that's probably the highest compliment that I can offer. You mentioned that the first piece that got you in trouble years ago, around 2016, was you were criticizing sort of, I guess it was Islam's connection with or the notion of Islamophobia and sort of what was happening on the left. We really are seeing this red-green alliance right now, and it's really burst forth in Europe more than it's burst forth here, although we're obviously seeing some of the seeds of it there. You spend a lot of time in Europe. What are you seeing? Because I sense, particularly in the UK right now, and Ireland too, I should mention, there is a real pushback against this.
The Red-Green Alliance is a phenomenon that first happened a number of years ago in Europe and also in the UK, where leftist politicians found that they could potentially gain power by trying to court the Muslim vote, as the Muslim population has grown a lot in a number of European countries like France or the Netherlands or the UK. And so on and so forth. A lot of these politicians nowadays are with parties such as the Green Party, or they might be independent. And this is it's a dangerous development because the particular Muslim vote that they're courting is not like integrated, moderate type of Muslims. They're going after they're partnering with so-called community leaders who are Islamists, who are radical, who are into political Islam, and they're trying to use those type of influencers to get votes within these communities that are self-segregating. And of course, those communities may vote them in, and they have particular demands, right? You're going to they have demands about whether it be most recently over they want their views of the hatred of Israel being represented in parliament, for example. They want a lot of institutional funding and support for anti-Islamophobia type causes. And a lot of the anti-Islamophobia campaigns is blasphemy. In other words, essentially in that anti-blasphemy, and that they don't want people to be able to criticize aspects of their religion, or to try to put a stop, for example, to mass migration. All these type of things are being championed by left-wing politicians. This is like in France, it's particularly acute. France is the largest Muslim population in Europe, and now the left-wing coalitions, whether they be the far left through the France Unbowed party that's under Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Many of his party members were elected as MPs most recently, and these are like far left, to the point where some of the legacy media is describing them as far left or hard left. Like they can't even just describe
which for them to get
left-wing.
there, yeah.
Yeah, and they've had in part of this party are people who are actually there's one particular person who's actually a member of Antifa. They are holding up all these Antifa banners at their political rallies. They go to particular migrant areas to campaign, and they campaign successfully and get the votes. And so, Muslim politics in Europe is going to be destabilizing. It's destabilizing now. It will be in the future. I mean, in the UK, several Labour politicians, for example, felt like their lives were in danger because the party leadership wasn't willing to take a anti-Israel stance. Because some of these Labour MPs represent areas with very high Muslim populations in the middle of England or in the north. and they face a lot of death threats since October as well. So, yeah,
What
it's
do you think that portends for Europe? I mean, I know all the countries have their own issues here. They have different leadership. It sounds like Geert Wilders is going to be a little more proactive about this, maybe in the Netherlands than what's going on, say, in the UK right now. But what do you think it looks like in 10 years?
I think it's a continuance of the path that Europe has been on, in that as its Muslim population and citizenry continues to grow, their demands are going to be louder and no longer something you can really ignore. Is in a lot of their demands clash with the liberal democratic values of those particular countries. One's going to give way to another. We'll see which one wins in the end. In the UK, for example, there was a teacher who's been in hiding now for a couple of years because he showed there was a lesson about Muhammad, and he showed some of the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, I believe it was, and he received threats, and the British state wasn't able to protect him, other than, I guess, assist him in being in hiding. And so it's sort of seeding the ground in that if you dare to somehow potentially not even criticize Islam, just show something that's like a reality of it. For example, like that for many radical Muslims, they don't respect freedom of expression, particularly in art. That your life can be at risk and you might be killed, and the state won't be able to help you. They won't be able to prosecute those protesters who are threatening outside of the school, outside of people's homes. And of course, and another thing I should bring up is that what it portends really for the present and the future is that the norms of society will change, and people will self-censor. The legislation doesn't even have to change. For example, you're not going to see any media run cartoons of the Charlie Hebdo from 2015, the ones that caused that newsroom to be that magazine room to be slaughtered. Then they don't publish that, and that's part of the story. And people can't even see how innocuous these cartoons were. They don't run that, so that's self-censorship. People are not going to be willing to teach some of that material in the state education anymore. Seeing what's happened, for example, in France with the teacher being beheaded, in England with the teacher having to go into hiding for years. So people just self-censor themselves.
If you're looking for more uncensored opinions from today's thought leaders, check out our media playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.